My name is Donna. Once again, this is part 2 of my testimony. If you have not watched part 1 yet, you need to go back, go watch part 1, and get the context that you need. I have in my caption where you can skip to get right to the testimony, because at the beginning of part 1, I gave a lot of details and context to who I am, where I come from, and how I got to the point of my testimony. So this is part 2. God allowed me to go through that time of oppression. Because this is what he revealed to me later on. He allowed that to happen because of the layers of bondage that I was under. It took something that drastic to wake me up. And that's my prayer for everyone, honestly. I tell my children all the time, don't let it come to these conditions where God has to do something drastic to get your attention. That God has to allow something drastic to get your attention, because it, I almost felt like I would not have made. I feel like a lot of people don't make it back from that kind of torment and oppression. A lot of times people don't even realize that it's spiritual. They think that their life is over and that it's something going on with them specifically and only them, and nobody understands, and there's no way out but death. And a lot of people don't make it back from that. So my prayer is that, you know, that God doesn't have to do something drastic to get your attention. So anyway, following the encounter I had in my room, the next day, as I said in my previous video, I woke up and I knew it to be true, because that pressure that was on my head and in my head was gone. It was completely gone. The pressure was gone. Now, the loop, the thoughts, the repetitive name, it was as almost if God just dialed it down. He didn't completely, and this is something he revealed to me later on, he did not completely deliver me from that, because there was still some work that needed to be done in me. There's some things that still needed to be, I still needed to wake up from. And he revealed to me later on that he just turned it down a few notches just so I could cope, just so I could live, because it was just too much to bear. And the torment of the intrusive, repetitive voice that I would hear over and over and over and over again, it was almost as if the volume was turned down, and it was not as repetitive. So it was like I could breathe a little bit. I could come up for air. That's what it felt like. Soon after that, I met my now husband, because I just felt like I just felt like I could, start to date again. I could, get back out into the world. See, it still wasn't clicking. It still wasn't clicking. After this horrible torment that was going on for so many years, that I any day now, I thought I was just going to die or kill myself. And then I have an encounter with God, and Jesus literally comes into my room and delivers me from this thing. And I had this experience, and it still wasn't clicking. It still was not clicking. So as I said, I began to go back out into the world. I was never a really bad person. I never was a heavy drug user or drinker or anything of that nature. But I just like to hang out with friends that did use a lot of drugs and drink. I used to like to go to the clubs. I wasn't a heavy clubber, but I would go occasionally. And as I said, I just began to date, and then I met my husband, who became my boyfriend. Now, I was still dealing with this voice that I would hear, right? But I was at a place where I could cope, and it still caused me torment, And it still bothered me so deeply. But I was able to, live my life without just, wanting to give up every day that I opened my eyes. So, I had some hope. Anyway, I was living in an apartment that I had been for some time. I was there for a while. And it got to the point where I couldn't live there anymore. A lot of things happened. The people that used to live there previously were dealing in a lot of illegal activity. So I kept getting police coming by my house, even though years had passed, asking me questions about, showing me pictures, asking me if the person still lived there. And I mean, even at one point, my house got raided. My door was kicked in the middle of the night, all kinds of stuff. And it was just a lot of turmoil between me and the manager at that rental property. So I ended up moving back into my mom's house. I go to my mom's house. We're living there for a little bit. Not long after we're living there, I remember I was laying on her couch one night, and I don't even know where my children were. I think they were with their grandmother. Not my mom, but their other grandmother, their father's mom. And I was laying on the couch, and I could hear clear as day, random, out of nowhere, I heard the Lord say, I am going to allow you to experience a whole day of complete, uncontaminated, pure peace. He didn't explain to me any details why he was doing it. I didn't get revelation until later on what this was, and I'll share that after I tell you what happened. But I heard him clear as day say, I'm going to allow you to experience what true peace is. And I knew that I was only going to be allowed to experience this peace for just one day. I knew that I was going to go to sleep, wake up. I was going to be able to experience that peace for the whole day. And I knew that once I fell asleep and when I woke up again, it would be gone. I knew that I knew that I knew. This is what God spoke to me. And I didn't understand. Once again, here we go, confused Donna. I don't know what's going on. I just know what I heard the Lord say. I know I heard the Lord say, this is what was about to happen. And so I just let it happen. I woke up the next day, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I didn't have a bad thought, a bad feeling, a bad memory. I could remember what my life was before, but it wasn't as if it didn't haunt me. It didn't bother me. I had complete and utter peace. I mean, the kind of peace that nothing that I've experienced here on earth kind of peace. Almost as if I had glasses on and I could see the beauty in everything. Everything was bright. Everything was colorful. I was just so at peace. I was so at peace. And I knew it was nobody but God. And I just did not want the day to be over. I did not want the day to be over. I wanted to enjoy this, and I wanted it to continue. I didn't even have the mind or the know-how to say a prayer and ask God for this to continue, or what is it, Lord, what is it that I need to do to get this or to keep this? I was just going for the ride, and looking back, and I could just see how ignorant and lost I truly was. I was so filled with joy. At one point, I just began to cry. I sat on the floor, crossed my legs in the middle of the floor, Indian style, and it was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. Now, I never even asked the question, God, why are you allowing me to feel this peace? I never even asked the question. I just knew that when I fell asleep and then when I woke up again, that peace was going to be gone. And sure enough, I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and that repetitive voice and that presence of evil was there. Let me reiterate once again. That's why if you're watching this video, you need to go back to part 1. The presence of evil and the repetitive voice was nowhere near as bad. But it was still there, and I know it was intentional. I know that God intentionally left a piece of that because it was still some humbling that had to take place. I needed to be humbled. And God needed to take those kind of measures to get me to open my eyes, to get me to be able to realize what was going on. I knew the spiritual realm was real. I knew that God was real. I knew that Satan was real. I even knew that demons were real because I could hear them. But I still was not falling on my knees and saying, Lord, here, my life is yours. I'm going to continue this video somewhere else because it's getting really dark. Be right back. Okay, at a different location, continuing my testimony. I left off talking about how even going through all of these things, I still was not falling on my knees, seeking the Lord, surrendering my life to him, and just wanting him to be the Lord of my life. I say it all the time. God chose me. And when I pray, I always thank God. I always thank God for choosing me, because he could have left me where I was. He could have left me in the pit. He could have left me in that darkness. So life just goes on, and I'm just living. I'm just living. I'm not living a horribly sinful life, but I'm not in love with him, as we all should be. I never forgot what he did for me. I never forgot that day of peace. But I want to say I just didn't know how or what to do. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have any like spiritual mentors, or I didn't know biblically what it would take for me to get in a place where I was completely saved. But I did have an idea. It just wasn't on my radar. I was just spiritually stagnant, and I had all these things happening to me. Was having all of these visions and dreams, and hearing these voices and all kinds of things, but I still was like just stagnant, spiritually stagnant. So by this time I'm married. I don't know how many years we were in yet. I'm leaving out a lot of details because I just want to get like to the testimonies, the stuff that happened to me, my journey into getting to know God, and him pursuing me, and now me being completely, absolutely sold out for Jesus, totally, absolutely in love. He is everything to me, the love of my soul, the joy of my heart. He's everything. And so I just want to get to how I got there. So now I'm married. I have a son, a new son, my third son, with my husband. And I want to say, without giving too many details, there was a lot of chaos in this marriage. A lot of fighting, a lot of discord, a lot of arguments, and a lot of just going back and forth with separating, coming back, separating, coming back. It was just a lot going on. This had been going on for some time, and I eventually ended up becoming pregnant again. So now I'm pregnant with my fourth child. I had 3 sons, and I was pregnant with my baby girl. Still not surrendered to God. Still going back and forth in this marriage with my husband. a lot of discord. Nothing was right. I was not living by God's will. I was living by my own will, which is how I ended up getting married in the first place. Which is a whole nother story. This is why I'm gonna have part 3, 4, 5, 6, and however many parts the Lord leads me to make. But I'm pregnant at this point. And I remember at this time, like I said, I was staying with my mom now. And we had a room in our basement. Fully furnished basement, had a bed in the basement, and that's where we were living. My 2 oldest boys were on the top floor. Me, my husband, and my youngest son were in the basement. By this time, I'm around 16 weeks pregnant. I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm going through some VHS tapes. I don't know if y'all know what VHS tapes are, but they're the tapes that go on a VCR. I'm trying to pick out a movie. I'm organizing the tapes in the basement. And I am sitting there. Out of nowhere, I hear the Lord say, "You will not get to keep her." And I knew who he was talking about. I didn't have to ask, keep who? I didn't have to question. I knew exactly what he was saying. He was saying that I would not get to keep my daughter, who I was pregnant with at the time. I was in complete denial. I shook it off as if I didn't hear it. I went into complete denial, and I was just like telling myself that was just a thought. Even though I knew it wasn't. Having your own thoughts and hearing the Lord actually tell you something are 2 totally different things. But I just wasn't having it. I was not having it. I was too through. I was like, yeah, right. I wasn't saying it to the Lord, but it was like I was just saying it to myself as if I had not heard him say that, but as if it was just a thought that I had. So time goes on. I get to 20 weeks pregnancy, 20-week pregnancy. By this time, I had completely put off what I heard the Lord say, and I was determined to just forget it altogether. I went to, it was the 4th of July. I went to a cookout with my husband to one of his friends' homes, one of his childhood friends. His mother always throws these huge cookouts every year. We go to the cookout, and I'm standing there, and his mother walks over to me, and she gives me a Bible, and she says, "Here, I just want you to have this. I was led to give this to you." I open up the Bible, and I go to read. I'm just looking through it. I'm saying, "Thank you so much." And I'm looking through the Bible, and I can't remember what scripture I was reading or what I opened it to. But all of a sudden, boom, I get hit in the head because they were doing fireworks. And they were doing the big ones, the real kind. All of a sudden, the firework, because they go up, but you never really think about how these things actually come back down. Comes down, and I mean, it just hits me in my head so hard, I almost stumbled to the ground. I had to catch myself. The pain was so horrendous. It was so bad that I had to leave. My husband and I grabbed our things, and we headed home. Maybe almost less than 24 hours after that, I was still having pain in my head. And I just remember after that pain started to subside, I started to have contractions. But, already having children, I'm thinking to myself, it's just, what do they call Braxton? Like, I'm just having these little small contractions. It's nothing. I'm not worried at all. As time goes on, as the night goes on, I'm still having these contractions. I'm still having these contractions. And I noticed that they're in a pattern. And now that I'm having them every few minutes, the same time. So now I'm getting a little concerned. I called my mother and she told me that I should head to the hospital. My husband was not there. I don't know where he was, but he was not there. I get in my car and I'm driving to the hospital. I'm still not worried to the point where I think that I'm about to have my child early. I'm driving to the hospital and I had my mother on the phone and I'm telling her, you know, just say a prayer. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm driving myself to the hospital. Just say a prayer. I'm going to the hospital. I'm good. I'm fine. I get to the hospital and the contractions are getting closer together. So they are trying everything to stop the contractions. They're giving me medication, all the different kinds of things that you could do to stop a pregnancy from going forward. The contractions stop. So I take a breath of relief and I'm just relaxing. I'm just chilling. I'm just waiting for them to, you know, give me the go ahead to leave. About 20 minutes into me not having contractions, the contractions start again. This time they're closer, even closer together, and they are more painful. The nurse walked over to me after checking me in and examining me, and she said to me, "You are dilated." I don't remember how many centimeters I was dilated, but she told me that I was dilated. And she said, "I have to let you know, hospital policy, that if you were to have this baby, we cannot do anything to resuscitate it, to keep the baby alive, or anything of that nature." I thought at the time when she said that to me, I thought it was such a cruel thing to say to somebody. She was so, like, as a matter of factly, so nonchalant in her attempt to tell me what the hospital policy was, as I am going through an experience that would be traumatic for any mother. I thought that was kind of harsh, and I looked at her and I said to her, "What do you mean?" So at that point, we had words back and forth. Not anything harsh or anything of that nature, but I basically let her know that I was very upset with what she said to me and how she said it to me. The contractions continue. They're getting more painful. The doctor finally comes in. He checks me and he tells me, "You're about to have this baby." Now I'm just panicking. I'm freaking out. And as they are preparing me to give birth, I remember the words that the Lord said to me. And I was devastated. I was completely devastated. I cried the whole time. I had to push. I had to give birth to my baby girl as if it was a normal 40-week term pregnancy and I was in labor. And I had to go through the motions of giving birth and push her out only for her to come out and see her breathing. She was alive when she was born. All I could do was cry and look at her and just beg God to save her life. But this decision was final. And my husband, he was there and he was losing it. He was screaming at the doctors, telling them that she's breathing. Just help her. Jesus. I spent the next 2 days in the hospital just holding her and saying goodbye to her. Family and friends visiting. I went home without my baby. And now at this point, I have to plan a funeral. I can't even wrap my mind around having to plan a funeral. I would never begin to even fathom or imagine that I would lose a child. I, within a day of being home, I began to, I couldn't digest what just happened to me. Mentally, it was almost like my body was like rejecting not carrying this baby in my womb, because I was physically just shaking all the time. Not all the time, but by the next day, that whole day, I was just shaking. I was jittery. My mind was all over the place. It was almost as if how a computer malfunctions because it has like too much going on and too much data. It's like overwhelmed. That's what it was. I was just malfunctioning. I was shaking. I couldn't stop shaking, and I was just losing it. And this is the first and only time that I've ever experienced, finding out later on, that I literally had a nervous breakdown. My mom and my husband rushed me to the hospital. I'm in a hospital, and I'm just laying on the gurney, waiting for a doctor to come in, and I am shaking. I'm afraid. I'm scared because I don't know what's happening to me physically. I'm already dealing with the mental stuff, and I feel like I'm about to lose it at this point. I'm laying there on my side, laying down on the gurney, and I'm shaking. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what happens now? I have so many questions. And at this point, I'm just thinking, like, this can't be life. So I'm laying in this bed, and I'm laying on my side, and I'm facing the wall. I'm looking at the wall, and I'm just thinking to myself, what what would the quality of my life be at this point? How am I going to go on living like this? And I'm just beginning to become consumed with that thought. And my anxiety it was at an all-time high. And I'm just still shaking. And I'm looking at the wall, and I say, Jesus. And as soon as I said that, keep in mind, there's nobody in the room with me. By this time, we had been in there for hours. I think my husband might have went to get something to eat. And my mom was home at this point. And I said, Jesus. And as I laid there, I felt somebody come up behind me and give me the biggest bear hug. And it was so comforting and relaxing. I instantly stopped shaking. I instantly calmed down. All the crazy thoughts and feelings and overwhelmingness completely left me. And I just drifted off. I felt myself just slowly drifting off to sleep. And I slept. And I laid there and I slept. I mean, we all know how hospital ER visits can be. Sometimes you're in that room for hours before somebody comes to see you or check back in with you. And I slept there on that gurney I had to be asleep for almost 2 hours. The doctor later on told me he came in and saw me sleeping so peacefully that he just left me alone. He figured I might have just needed rest. Because like I said, I came in basically having a nervous breakdown. The doctor assumed that, you know, she just needs rest. And he said he came in, he saw me sleeping. He said, I'll come back and check back with her. And I just slept. And I got, oh my goodness, that was some of the best rest other than the rest I spoke previously about. That was some of the best rest I had in a very, very, very long time. And by the time I woke up from that and realized that somebody hugged me, and here's the kicker, I didn't even turn around or get startled as if, like, who is this hugging me? I already knew who it was. I wasn't startled. I wasn't like, I mean, it's crazy thinking going back, thinking about this stuff now. How I wasn't really tripping. Like, I knew who it was, and I was comforted immediately, and I went to sleep. The next part of this story is when my life completely changed, and I never looked back. The next part of this story is nothing short but of a miracle. And it's where my complete and utter surrender and salvation come into place. And I'm gonna have to make a part 3 for that part. Definitely gotta stick around, come back for part 3 and listen to the next part of this story. God bless.